It was just something that we'll never see again, good Lord willing, and it's something you just can't forget.
2 decades after the terror attacks of September 11th, the scars remain, but so do reminders of America's resilience and Americans' courage and resolve in the face of tragedy. Thank you for staying with us tonight. I'm Jennifer Vaughn.
And I'm Tom Griffith. Thousands of families were shattered when terrorists attacked iconic American buildings on September 11th, 2001. 2,753 people died when planes hit the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. 184 were killed when another plane flew into the Pentagon.
But that day also put a spotlight on American resolve when passengers on Flight 93 decided to overpower al-Qaeda hijackers and crash their plane rather than let it be used as a weapon. 40 travelers and crew members died there. 2 women with links to New Hampshire still feel the loss of that day.
Their husbands worked for the same company and were separated by just one floor in the World Trade Center. Monica Hernandez tells us how they are remembering the men they loved.
This is the 2 of us.
This book is filled with memories. Some of Cindy Comer's last months with her husband of 33 years, Ron Comer.
He loved to scuba, and this was his last scuba dive.
And this one, near the home they shared in Long Island, snapped days before he would go to work on the 100th floor of the World Trade Center and never come home.
I, to this day, cannot watch photos of the towers.
Yeah, you don't want to see the pain.
I just don't want to see how he went.
Cindy, who now lives in Bedford, prefers to remember how he lived.
He just kind of went with the flow, easygoing, kind. He never raised his voice.
An Army veteran who served in Vietnam, this father of 2 loved his work, running the claims department at Marsh Insurance in New York.
He loved his job. He absolutely, he treated it as if it was Ron Comer Insurance Brokers.
In fact, he had a meeting scheduled in Midtown that morning, but went to the World Trade Center first to get some work done.
I never got to say goodbye. That's the hardest.
That's why this bench holds so much meaning.
It says, no time for goodbye. Ron Comer.
With help from friends and neighbors, it will forever overlook Long Island's Northport Harbor.
He just loved that park, and he loved to look at the boats down at the waterfront.
After 20 years, she's learned grief has no timeline.
You'd think after a certain length of time, okay, get over it. You can't. And you really want to. It's not that you don't want to. You just can't. I still miss him.
Dick Keene was just 1 floor below Ron Comer, also working for Marsh Insurance.
I didn't realize he was going to be in the World Trade Center that day.
His wife, Judy Keene, says it's not the building where he normally worked while in New York. He was there for a special meeting. DNA confirmation of his death took months.
My kids were, they liked the closure. But for me, my dream was gone, that he had survived somehow.
The 2 met at St. Anselm College, but called Connecticut home.
He made friendships that lasted forever.
A Marine veteran and father of 5, Dick loved coaching.
He loved sports. He coached the kids in all kinds of sports all the time. And he always made the comment that there just was not enough basketball courts in town.
That's why 1 month after his death, loved ones launched the Keene Foundation, building this youth sports center and running after-school programs to this day.
I know that if Dick were to hear of it, he would be very, very pleased to know that his name was being used to support such programs.
Well, to mark tomorrow's anniversary, Cindy Comer will make meatloaf, Ron's favorite dish. And Judy Keene will continue her work for the Keene Foundation. If you would like to find out more, go to keenefoundation.org.
So one New Hampshire memorial to the victims of September 11th is expanding this year. WMUR's Gene Mackin was there 10 years ago when Hudson Fire Crews picked up the central piece of that town's memorial.
And now she explains how the design came together and how it's still growing.
On a hill inside Hudson's Benson Park, a steel beam reaches to the sky, the centerpiece of symbolism here. These twin towers represent the World Trade Center standing on sacred ground.
Here we are 20 years later, and trying to remember where you were that day isn't hard for many people. It still hits the same way every year when it comes around.
Retired fire captain and now selectman David Morin and Hudson Fire Chief Rob Buxton know the magnitude of this memorial. 10 years ago, they brought this piece of ground zero to New Hampshire.
We can't do enough, and this is going to be a fitting tribute.
We traveled with the fire and police departments to New York to pick up the beam. It came from the North Tower, the same building struck by Flight 11, carrying David Kowalson on a business trip that morning. Before the beam became the heart of Hudson's memorial, firefighters sat at a table inside their station and made a simple sketch of a big dream.
It was a napkin, actually, from the table. And in 15 minutes, we had discussed what we wanted, and it was sketched on the napkin.
The walkway through the memorial is shaped like the flight path of the plane that struck the Pentagon, lined by markers engraved with the exact time of each heartbreaking event.
The granite stones are the timeline of the events that took place that day when the towers were struck. The grass around the memorial represents the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the plane crashed.
It is in the shape of a pentagon. The steel beam and the tower built next to it facing the same direction as the original Twin Towers.
Just one of the special things about this memorial, you're welcome to reach out your hands and touch it.
Many people go up and touch the steel and have a moment of silence by the steel, and I think that's a big part of this memorial.
Soon, a new stone will be added.
And that will be in memory of all the first responders who have died from the illness related to the 9/11 attacks. It touches your heart, that's for sure. 30, 40, 50 years from now, to be able to come here and visit and remember is important.
First responders is a term that grew out of September 11th when more than 400 police, firefighters, and other emergency crews made the ultimate sacrifice by heading into danger. Here in New Hampshire, crews with the same training felt helpless, so many headed to New York City to aid in any way they could. Two of them shared their experiences with Jennifer Crompton.
The horror of September 11th played out in real time. Media outlets sharing images no one could fathom. First responders here in New Hampshire aware that as the unthinkable unfolded, fellow police and firefighters were headed straight into it. Now Assistant Chief Bill McQuillan was a 31-year-old Portsmouth firefighter at the time.
My first reaction was much like everybody else's, just total shock at what was going on, and then disbelief at what we were seeing.
344 New York City firefighters died that day, 71 law enforcement officers, including 37 from the Port Authority. First responders here wanting to do something, anything to help. Jim Stankiewicz was a Manchester police detective sergeant at the time.
Four of us had the privilege, and it was a privilege, to go and assist Ricky Gilman, Mike Byron, and Scott Page. So we went down, they needed vehicles, so we brought 2 vehicles down and, went where they sent us.
5 days and nights stationed at Ground Zero, working as a transport service for the Port Authority, shuttling people to and from the site.
You're there, the sights, the smells, the sounds, the recovery of bodies, the memorials that went up, the notes from kids looking for their parents.
Portsmouth firefighters among several New Hampshire departments making bus trips down to attend funerals of the fallen.
To make sure that they got a proper send-off, given the fact that the majority of the firefighters were still working at the World Trade Center site.
Their bus at one point redirected to Ground Zero.
So that they could bring the remains of the firefighter out with a group of firefighters standing on the pile, saluting.
So many images seared into memory.
The amount of military and National Guard and police that were in the area providing security and keeping folks out was the first thing. And then the second thing was just the absence of people and the lack of a bustle.
Building windows shattered for blocks, everything covered in thick dust.
A vision that still sticks with me to this day, the bagel shop with all the coffee orders and the bagels lined up at the checkout that hadn't been touched. But the other thing that we noticed is that the food was still there, so even the rodents weren't around at that point. So it was pretty eerie, and that's the kind of thing that sticks with you.
You knew that this was just more than a crime scene, more than a call for service. It was just something that we'll never see again, good Lord willing, and it's something you just can't forget.
The New Hampshire National Guard played a pivotal role keeping our state and country safe in the hours, days, and months following the attacks. First securing airports and conducting flights over New York City and Washington, D.C., and then deploying members to the overseas war on terror. WMUR's Tim Callery sat down with Guard leaders to reflect on that day and discuss their mission 20 years later.
It was a beautiful, clear morning. Day started out absolutely wonderful.
I was at my civilian career, which was auto mechanic.
So I was a captain in the Mass Army National Guard on a Special Forces team. And I remember we were at Fort Drum, New York, doing some extensive training.
I remember I was on the phone with Governor Shaheen, and we had a conference call with all of our major staff.
Retired Major General John Blair was the Adjutant General at the time. That conference call barely made it past introductions when then Governor Shaheen was notified that a plane hit the Twin Towers.
Somebody in our briefing room turned on the television, and we were listening to the newscaster with the towers behind him, one of them burning. And when we saw that second airplane, we all knew that that wasn't an accident. We don't have two accidents like that in a day.
I had a lieutenant colonel who worked for me. His name was Jim Oganowski. He says, Dick, he says, I think that was my brother on American Flight 11. And he was right. Tom McGinnis and John Oganowski were the first casualties.
From that point on, it was all hands on deck.
We may be a small state, but maybe somebody would think that we would not be prepared, and it would be a softer target.
The first thing I do is I contact my command post, and we implement FARCON Delta, which is the highest state of readiness.
Retired Colonel Richard Martell served as the commander of the 157th Air Refueling Wing.
By noontime, every airplane we had was fueled, ready to go. Air crews, maintenance people coming in without being asked.
Within hours, the 157th was in the air.
Everyone was doing what they needed to do to get us up and running as fast as possible.
Senior Master Sergeant Alan Bolio refueled F-16 fighter jets as they patrolled the sky over New York City in the days following the attacks.
From 25,000 feet, Manhattan, you get a really good view of it. I brought binoculars and I'd look down. I mean, that coupled with what you're seeing on the news, it really hit.
Flying a combat mission over your own country, I cannot even explain to you what it feels like. It was our finest moment, all of us coming together and working together based on what was going on.
The focus would eventually switch to overseas as the United States headed into war.
Over 5,000 airmen have been deployed in man days. Over 5,000 Army Guardsmen have deployed in the quantity of man days. We've had 4 killed in action, one in Afghanistan, a Corporal Scotty Diamond, former police officer out of Franklin, and we've had 3 killed in action in Iraq.
Major General David Michaelides currently serves as Adjutant General. He did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and he says one thing that has held steady through all the years is the mission to protect and serve.
Today, the New Hampshire National Guard still has over 300 people deployed across the globe. Primarily the Middle East, United Nations peacekeeping missions in Kosovo, as well as the southwest border. And it's all about strengthening our alliances, protecting the homeland, and reestablishing and maintaining that international rules-based order.
U.S. troops are no longer in Afghanistan. The withdrawal was completed last week, nearly 20 years after America went to war because of the 9/11 attacks. WMUR's Mike Cronin is live now with the details of those final weeks there in Afghanistan.
America's longest war ended just last week when the final U.S. forces left Afghanistan, leaving behind a very uncertain future for that country. The Afghan government collapsed last month, and the president fled the country as the Taliban moved in, overtaking the capital of Kabul. U.S. government officials were caught by surprise, and during that frantic exit, tens of thousands of people were evacuated, including more than 5,000 Americans. But the final days of the withdrawal turned deadly when 13 U.S. service members and more than 100 Afghans were killed in an attack at the Kabul airport. And tonight, some U.S. citizens remain in Afghanistan. Afghans have been protesting the Taliban rule for weeks, and the Taliban's response has become increasingly violent. The United Nations calling on the group to stop the violence.
We call on the Taliban to immediately cease the use of force towards and the arbitrary detention of those exercising their right to peaceful assembly and the journalists who are covering the protests.
Meantime, legal proceedings continue against those charged with aiding and planning the September 11th attacks. Right now, 5 men remain at Guantanamo Bay Prison awaiting trial. Only one person has been tried and convicted in connection to the terror attacks. Back to you.
The 2001 attacks immediately raised difficult questions for America's commander-in-chief.
Former White House Chief of Staff Andy Card talked to WMUR's Adam Sexton about the choices that had to be made and what he wants people to keep from that day.
On Air Force One, after President George W. Bush gave the order to shoot down commercial airliners not responding to FAA orders to land, the President and Chief of Staff Andy Card learned that Flight 93 had gone down on its own.
Some of us on Air Force One wondered if it was shot down by one of our pilots. It turns out it was not. The first heroes in the war on terror were the passengers, the civilians on Flight 93. They were the first heroes in the war on terror when they said, let's roll.
That decision to not go down without a fight launched America into the global war on terrorism, one of the many legacies of 9/11. That also included the recalibration of how America defends its national security.
And thankfully, the United States and our infrastructure of military and intelligence and FBI, Justice Department, the Homeland Security Department, the TSA are all doing their job, and we haven't had, knock on wood, another attack, a terrorist attack. Other nations have, but the war on terror is not over.
Card says another legacy of 9/11 is one he tries to embody every day. Never forget.
I don't want young people today to forget the emotions of that day that they didn't get to experience because they weren't alive then. But, you know, there were people from New Hampshire that woke up on the morning of September 11th and drove down to Logan Airport. And they took off, and those planes were used to attack the World Trade Center towers. So it impacted people in New Hampshire.
There is one aspect of the aftermath of 9/11 Card would like to see if America can somehow revisit or revive the unity this country experienced, a kind of national harmony that seems further out of reach with each passing year.
Right now, the United States is very divided. We have a pandemic going on. We should take the lessons of 9/11 and see how can we demonstrate that we can come together today the way we did after the terrible attacks on September 11, 2001.
The federal response to the attacks included the formation of 2 new government agencies.
Still ahead, how today's approach to airport security is so different from 20 years ago.